Hey, you fuckers. What's going on, everybody? Comedy dates I got coming on. September the 9th, I am going to be at the Masonic Auditorium in Cleveland. I'm pretty sure Joey Diaz is doing that with me. He said he wanted to. I have to confirm. But September 9th, I'm definitely going to be there at the Masonic Auditorium. No, it doesn't mean I had to become a Freemason. But Masonic Auditorium, Cleveland, September 9th, joerogan.net/tour. And also next Friday, the 5th of August, I'm going to be at the Ice House in Pasadena. I don't have the lineup yet, but a bunch of local guys, bunch of awesome comics from the Los Angeles area. And all right, ads. What do I got left? ZipRecruiter. This podcast is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Ooh. If you're hiring and you need to find out how to get the best candidates for the job, most of the time what people do is you have to spend your already limited resources and go out and try to find somebody. You got to post these jobs to a bunch of different websites and post these opportunities and hope that someone responds that meets your criteria, and you got to find someone that fits the bill. But the problem is, if you're trying to find someone to fill a position, you're already low on resources. Well, ZipRecruiter has an amazing solution. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. You can find candidates in any industry, any city, nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No juggling emails or calls to your office. You can quickly screen candidates. I'll say that again. Quickly screen candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast. You can find out why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses. Right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan to try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. We're also brought to you by Ring.com. Ring.com is an amazing video doorbell that's been proven to stop burglaries before they happen by allowing you to see and speak to anyone approaching your door just using your smartphone. Because most of the time what happens is people ring a doorbell, they make sure no one's home, and then they break in. Well, with Ring, this advanced motion detection technology allows you to protect your entire property with the Ring of Security kit. This kit includes the Ring video doorbell for the front door and a Ring stick-up cam, a wireless weatherproof HD camera that allows you to keep an eye on other parts of your property. The Ring doorbell and the stick-up cam both install in minutes. They work together, and they provide 24/7 monitoring of your entire home, whether you're in the living room or whether you're thousands of miles away. It's a fucking beautiful idea, ladies and gentlemen. And for a limited time only, the listeners of this podcast can get $50 off the Ring of Security kit, the lowest price anywhere. Go to ring.com/Rogan now. That's ring.com/Rogan. Join the hundreds of thousands who protect their home with Ring. Ring.com/Rogan. And we're also brought to you by Ting. This is the last one. Ting is the official cell phone provider for the podcast. Ring Ting is the official cell phone provider for the podcast. If you go to rogan.ting.com, you can find out what Ting is all about. What Ting is a cell phone company that buys time on the Sprint and the T-Mobile backbone. So there's two different types of signals when it comes to cell phones. There's CDMA, which is Verizon and Sprint, and then there's GSM, which is T-Mobile and AT&T. And with Ting, you don't have to become a part of these big corporations, companies, to use their backbone. Use Ting. And by using Ting, what they call, their slogan, makes mobile make sense, it actually does make sense. You save a shitload of money. If you go to Ting, it'll tell you exactly how much you would save, but I believe, I'll pull it up here, but I think they said the average person, their bill is, here it is, their average bill is $23 a month. $440 is the average annual savings per device for a business with 11 to 20 employees. And again, you're using Sprint, you're using T-Mobile, using big companies. If you want to cancel, you quit anytime you want. There's no contracts. You only pay for what you use. There's another beautiful thing. Like if you use 2 minutes a month, that's what you pay for. You use 100, you pay for 100. Most of the time you have plans, like if you're with a big company and you get 100 minutes a month or whatever you get. If you go over that, you have big fees that you pay. If you go under that, you don't get any money back. With Ting, no early cancellation fees, no early termination fees. Quit whenever you want. No add-alongs, no bundle charges, no fucking weirdness, man. Real simple, real easy. Go to rogan.ting.com and you can save $25 off of any device or service. That's rogan.ting.com. And we're done. This episode is with just me. I'm alone in a hotel room. I was supposed to do an episode with my pal Duncan Trussell, but Duncan Trussell caught what is being referred to as the nerd flu. Apparently, when people go to Comic-Con every year, they get what they call the nerd flu. And what the nerd flu is people that are like, I guess, either they don't get out much, and when they do get out, their immune systems are severely compromised, and these fucking bugs just run rampant through this sea of dorks. Something like that. Or maybe it's just a factor of having so many people in a room together, or so many people in groups together. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But Duncan's sick as shit. That's my point. So Duncan couldn't make it today, but he will be back on Monday. So what I did was I put up some questions, or I put up a post on Twitter and let people ask me questions, and I answered a few of them. And so that's this podcast. I hope you enjoy it. Please welcome me.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I am in a hotel room right now in Atlanta, Georgia, and I almost didn't make it to Atlanta. I almost accidentally went to Chicago. I've been traveling so much lately, I literally forgot where I was going. I don't think you're supposed to say literally there. I actually forgot where I was going. I went to the gate at American Airlines, and when they call first class, all the first class people are like, ooh, that's me. Everybody else has to wait. Well, I was one of those assholes, and I went up to the gate and gave the lady my phone, because it's in your phone. They scan your phone, and she puts it down. I go, eh. She goes, sir, this is for Atlanta. And I look up, and the plane was going to Chicago, and I was like, oh, dummy. So that was me. I was one of those guys in a big rush to get on the plane that I'm not even supposed to be on. But I made it here. I love Atlanta. Atlanta's a badass place. It's a fun town. I did a special here in 2012. Just always enjoyed it here. It's a good city. It's an unusual city. It's very, I don't know, it's just got its own thing. But a lot of cities are like that. A lot of cities have their own thing. I'm sitting here in my hotel room. I was going to do a podcast on the plane, and I put it out on Twitter. I said, if you got any questions, I'll answer them. And I was thinking about doing it on the plane because the plane had Wi-Fi, but there was this lady behind me with her kid. Oh, my God. Some people just don't fucking pay attention to their kid. They just don't. They just don't do anything. Her kid was going fucking crazy. First of all, he was kicking the back of my seat constantly, just kicking it. Not like putting his feet up and resting, just thump, 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 thump. He's a cute little guy. He's a little tiny fella. He's probably only maybe 2 or 3 at the most. And I really like kids. Maybe I would have been irritated if I didn't have kids. I probably would have been. But what was irritating was the lady was ignoring him. And she was laying there with her eyes closed. She was a big fat lady. And her kid's going, Mama, 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 Mama. I mean, yelling. And I finally sat up and I turned around and looked at her. And she looked at me like there was something wrong with me. I was like, bitch, talk to your fucking kid. He's screaming at you and you're ignoring him. Some people just decide that because they have to deal with the burden of taking care of a kid, and, kids, they have a short attention span. They want your attention when they want it. They don't want to wait. They don't have any patience. They're fucking babies. It's a 2-3-year-old baby. And she just wasn't having it. She thought she should be able to just relax, and that everybody else, I guess she just didn't take any consideration at all the other people around her, while her kid is fucking screaming. She's just laying there with her hands folded in her belly. She had like this fat belly. Her hands were laying on top of her fat belly, and it wasn't pregnant. I don't think. She had 3 kids there. She might have been just really into dick. She might have had another baby on the way. But I think she was just fat. I'm just going to guess she was fat. And this fucking kid was screaming in her face, and she just kept her eyes closed. It's like, God damn it. Pay attention to your fucking kid, lady. But it was pretty evident right away there was no way I was going to be able to get a podcast going and just talk into it without this kid screaming in the background, which, might have been funny. I don't know. It's more likely it would have been annoying. So I didn't do it, but I'm here in my hotel room right now. It's 5:20, and I have a show tonight at 8 o'clock. So I got a couple hours here to kill. So I figured I'll do it here. And I was going to have my friend Ian McCall on. If Ian's been on the podcast before, he's been on Fight Companions before, and he's one of the UFC's top flyweight contenders. He was scheduled to fight tomorrow, but his opponent, Justin Scoggins, did not make weight. It's very unfortunate because Justin is a very, very talented guy, and I was looking forward to watching that fight. It would have been a really interesting fight. One of the big fights on the card that I was looking forward to. But so Ian wound up training for 6 weeks and weighing in all for nothing. He decided to weigh in anyway just to prove a point. He fights at flyweight, which is 125 pounds, it's a brutal cut. I think he probably walks around somewhere around 150 if I had to guess, and he's got to cut all the way down to 125. And he just decided to do it anyway just to make a point because he's a professional. So hopefully we'll do a podcast later with Ian. You know what? While I'm doing this on my iPhone. Whoops. I'm doing this on my iPhone, and I realize while I'm doing it that I do not have airplane mode on. Now I do, so people can't call me. Because I think if somebody calls you, the recording just stops. So it's ongoing now, folks, and it's sitting here. My mic stand is a Diet Coke can. And so I'm going to read some of this shit that the questions people asked on the Twitter. So I'm here, I'm doing the Laughing Skull in Atlanta tonight for 2 shows. It's a cool little room. But when I say little room, I mean it's fucking tiny. I think it seats 80 people. And I was just here a couple months ago for the Tabernacle. I was at the Tabernacle Theater, which is a big ass place. And I just decided, I don't really have that much new material because really I was working on just tightening down all the material that I had for my special. And once I recorded the special, now I'm in sort of I guess you would call it subject acquisition mode, where I sort of sit around and try to figure out what I'm gonna expand upon, what ideas I'm gonna start planting, and then try to make them grow on stage. This is the scary part of doing stand up. I wouldn't say obviously it's not scary, but this is the most troublesome or nerve-wracking or exciting. It's the most exciting time of stand-up. The most exciting is certainly the actual filming of a special. That's very exciting. And the idea that it's done and, okay, I did that material the best justice I could do, and now I'm going to release it. And then the most exciting part after that is this this period that I'm at right now where I don't have shit. I don't have any new material. I have a bunch of subjects. I have a bunch of ideas that I wrote down on my phone. I have a bunch of subjects that I talked about on stage a few times, but they never really became bits, and I will eventually piece those out, and I'll put those up on a cork board with index cards. I take index cards and I write the subjects down, and I slap them up on a cork board so I can look at them in my office. And I've got a few of those, but man, this is about as fresh and embryonic a state as my stand-up is ever in. It's there's a period that I've been, over the last few years, I've been doing it every 2 years. Every 2 years seems to be like a good number for me. Like, I guess I could probably do a new hour every year, but I don't think it would be at its best. And some of those bits, they get better as time goes on. And I would love to have what I think is as close to the finished version as I can before I release it. So 2 years seems to be the time and so there's this period where you sort of slam down the samurai sword, you hammer it down, get it to the best edge that you can get it to, and then throw it all away and start from scratch. So that's where I'm at, yo. So these kind of podcasts probably help. Subject matter is it's just up in the air. I mean, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to talk about. So let me get to some of these questions. I'm kind of rambling here. Let's see what we got here. How can we help Governor Gary Johnson grow on social media, etc.? That's a good question. Governor Gary Johnson, I should tell you guys this. Former governor. Are you always a governor? It's like, they say President Carter. Like Jimmy Carter's obviously not the president anymore, but they still call him President Carter. I don't know how that works. But what I do know is that he will be on the podcast next Thursday with Doug Stanhope. So Gary Johnson and Doug Stanhope together. Because Doug has an idea, a great idea that we're going to announce on the podcast. I guess I could kind of announce it now or talk about it now. What Doug's idea is to do a live podcast during election night, an election night coverage podcast, and do a series of podcasts actually live from the Comedy Store. So the idea is we get a bunch of different guys who have podcasts and gals and, whoever signs up for it, whoever we decide to have on it. But I believe Bill Burr's in. I believe Mark Maron's in. Doug's in. I'm in. And what we're going to do is we're going to do these podcasts live. And either we'll all be on stage at the Comedy Store at the same time, or we will we'll mix it up and, we'll have like shifts or something like that. Or I think it's probably going to be as informal as possible. So that's the deal. I'm uncomfortable here because I'm sitting down this weird way where I'm trying to lean into this microphone. And I think when you get too close to these things, it picks up a bunch of pops. So let me see if there's a better way to... I want to change the volume of this. Here's another question. So that's the answer to that. How can you help Gary Johnson? I think a lot of word of mouth, just talking about it, tweeting about it. People read your tweets, even if it's only a couple people, they'll tweet it out. It spreads. Tweet anything that you find that's interesting. Interviews of his, maybe my interview that I did with him on the podcast. Other stuff that you can find of him on YouTube. He's the most reasonable guy, in my opinion, running for president. And people don't take him seriously because he's a libertarian and it's either Democrat or Republican or waste your vote. That's like the mindset that we have here in this country. I think that this election is probably going to change a lot of that. I think that what we're looking at right now is probably one of the worst cases of, I don't want to say the lesser of two evil. I don't like it. I don't think you like it. I don't think anybody likes it. I don't think that what we're being offered right now is the best options available. I think it's the only options because I think the job sucks. I think nobody wants that job. But Gary Johnson apparently wants it. But it's just it's a fucked up job. I don't want to sit here and dwell on politics and talk politics with everybody, but it just, to me, is one of the most depressing times ever for picking a president. Steven Crowder from Louder with Crowder, he's been on my podcast before. He just put a video on YouTube about all the reasons why you shouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. And he details all the different times she's been caught lying. And not just lying about little shit, lying about big, crazy shit. Like the origin of her name. She said that she was named after someone who was like the first guy to climb Mount Everest. But something like that. Someone who climbed Mount, not that. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, it turns out the guy who she was claiming she was named after did what she was claiming he did when she was 6. So there's no fucking way that's true. She lied about that. She lied about a bunch of things. She lied about Benghazi being motivated by a video. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was a video that someone put on YouTube that it was some video about Islam, and it was really bad. It was like a terrible, terrible movie. Some like ridiculously bad, like amateur shitbag movie. And the word on the street for a while was that movie was the motivation behind the attacks on Benghazi. And it's total horseshit. And it was what the narrative was, though, for a while. And, I mean, maybe Hillary Clinton didn't know any better. But either way, it's an interesting video to watch if you want to watch this video and decide why you don't want to vote for Hillary. But there's plenty of videos out there that'll let you know why you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump either. I mean, what the fuck am I rambling about here? I'm being political. Let me have a cup of coffee here. So that's the answer. Gary Johnson, if you just, tell people you enjoy he's a fucking reasonable guy. Like, I hung out with the guy. I shot pool with him. He's very reasonable. Could he survive the barrage of the Trumpettes? What do they call the Trumpkins? The guys who are really into Trump? I don't know. That's a fucking weapon he's got. It's like back when Opie and Anthony had the pests. They would turn the pests on them, but then eventually the pests turned on them. It's interesting. So that's the Gary Johnson answer. Who's fatter, Tom Segura or Bert Kreischer? That's a very good question. It's a very good question. I don't know if you realize this, but two of my very good friends, Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, they're both hilarious guys, and they have decided to do this thing where they're calling each other fat. They're both, I love them both to death, but they could both lose a couple of pounds. They could both lose a little. And they've just decided to have this public thing where it's like hashtag Bert is fat, hashtag Tom is fat. I'm going to move my phone to this new thing. Ooh, that's better. And so they sell T-shirts like hashtag Tom is fat and hashtag Bert is fat T-shirts, and all the proceeds for the sales of those go directly to them. So you're not helping any fucking charities. No starving kids are getting fed. They're just going to buy food and get fatter. And in Bert's case, he's probably going to buy boxes of wine. Bert drinks boxes of wine in an evening. And someone was trying to explain to me how many bottles of wine that is, and we don't really know. I could Google that. I'm going to Google that right now. Let's find out. If you had a guess, how many boxes of wine would you say? Let's take a guess. How many bottles, rather? How many bottles of wine are in a box? All right, how many bottles of wine are in a box? Here it goes. I'm good. Before I click on it, I'm going to say I think it was 9. I'm going to say 9. That seems like a lot. 4 bottles. Okay. Oh no. Okay. 6 2/3 bottles. All right, here it goes. 750 milliliter bottles. How many 750 milliliter bottles are there in a 5-liter box of wine? It's 6 2/3. And if it's a 3-liter box of wine, it's 4 bottles. I bet he's drinking the 6 2/3 in a night. I think he's done more than one. I forget what he said, but he's definitely drank at least one box in a night on a regular basis. So that's 4 bottles of wine. I would be dead. I don't know how he does it. Well, he's definitely fat. I mean, that helps. And then it's also there's a tolerance issue. When you drink that much all the time, your body just gets used to it. There's your body's like, okay, this asshole's going to be pouring poison down the hole every day. Time to get used to it. So that's why. Mythbusters. How many bottles of wine in a box? I've been told a box of wine is equivalent to 5 bottles. Now I got to see if it's truth or a myth. What kind of? That's not a myth. That's a measurement. This is just somebody's wacky website. So that's what the Bert and Tom, like who's fat thing is all about. So if you see hashtag Bert is fat, that's what that's all about. Or hashtag Tom is fat, which is sort of a retaliation. And they would call him Bert Chrysler. I don't know. Tom's podcast with his wife, Christina Pazitsky, they have this podcast called Your Mom's House. It's fucking hilarious. It's really funny. And it's really unique. Like, it's really their own kind of thing. I only did it once, but it's really fun. They have their own vibe. They're the pound for pound funniest couple. Tom and Christina. It's close. It's like Bonnie McFarlane and Rich Voss are right up there. But, man, I think Tom and Christina might have them by a hair. By a hair. All right. Next question. Boy, some of these questions are fucking terrible. Will the Doom podcast ever happen? That's a good question. Soprano Pictures. Yeah, probably will. I've just been crazy busy. I'm editing the comedy special right now. And when that's over, I'll have some rest and relaxation time. And yeah, what we're going to do is, it probably won't be like a regular podcast because it probably won't be that interesting to listen to or watch. We'll have it just like as like a supplemental thing, or we'll do it on Twitch. Twitch is this thing that these young kids are doing these days. Twitch is this, and I'm sorry if this is popping. I might be too close to this. If I'm popping my peas. Twitch is this thing that young kids are doing where you're watching video games being played by other people. And it's really popular, hugely popular. In fact, they make money from it. They play video games and they make money playing video games. Like, who saw that coming? Nobody, right? Nobody ever thought that it would be interesting to watch people play video games. But when I used to play Quake, people used to get into these things called demos. Like, you would watch guys like, there was this kid named Thresh. He was like the big gamer back in the day. The big Quake players, like one of the best in the world, if not the best. And I would watch his demos just because he could fuck guys up playing that game in a way that I could never do. And I think if you can watch someone do something, like when I was competing in Taekwondo tournaments, one of the things that really helped me a lot was I would go, like when I was coming up, I would go and watch like big time tournaments. Like I went to Colorado Springs to watch the World Cup. And this was in like, I would say like 1986, I think it was. And I went to Colorado Springs to watch the World Cup because I knew that the best fighters in the world were going to be there, the best Taekwondo guys. Guys like Herb Perez and, God, I'm trying to remember some of these names. There was this guy, Nassim, I don't remember his last name, but he was this bad motherfucker from the Ivory Coast. Boy, I'll remember it. As soon as this podcast is over, I'll remember his name. It's driving me crazy. Patrice Remarque, that's his name. Patrice Remarque was his name. It's not Nassim. Nassim was another guy who was also a bad motherfucker. There was a bunch of them. But anyway, these guys were like at a very high level, much, much better than me. And I remember going and watching them compete made me better. I remember seeing that level of competition, and then all of a sudden in my mind, I had higher expectations of myself and a higher ceiling, I guess, of potential. Like I looked at all these guys and how good they were, and I realized what was possible. So it sort of ramped up in my mind what I needed to do to be at my best. And immediately afterwards, I went on to win one of the biggest tournaments I ever won, which was, one of the biggest in Massachusetts, the Bay State Games, which was right after I got back. Just from watching, I got better, guaranteed. Point is, we would watch these things, these demos in Quake. So what you could do is, there was you would hit the tilde key. The tilde key is that key that's right below the escape button on your laptop, or your keyboard rather, and it would pull this drop down menu like a control panel. Not even a drop down menu. It's just like, it was like code, like DOS, and you would have to type in certain things. I forget how you would do it, but you had to learn like what little symbols to use and stuff. It was almost like kind of coding, but you could type in demo and you could run a demo. And then later on, I think they put it in the menu, the actual menu of the game. But in the old days, like especially the Quake 1 days, you used to have to know what to write in the code, and then you could record demo. And you would record a demo, and this way you'd be watching the game play out from the person's eyes. Like you would watch their screen, like what they're seeing when they're playing the game. And it made you better. It definitely did. And I think it's exciting to watch, too. It's exciting to see if someone could pull something off. Like I'd watch this Thresh guy, or there was another guy named Immortal. He was a bad motherfucker. And he was another guy who's like one of the best in the world. You'd watch him play and you just go, Jesus. Because he would hit guys, like they'd be in midair, like jumping, and he would shoot them in the face with a rocket. It was just, he was so good. He would rail guys. A railgun is this super high powered thing that shoots this, I guess, like, I don't know what a rail is, a ball or something like that. But it has this cool like tracer behind it, like this laser tracer, like pew, and it's almost like instantaneous. The speed in it, it's faster than a rocket, and you'd be able to, you'd have to time it just absolutely perfectly. And these guys would be able to do things with those rail guns that were just so impressive to someone who sucked like me. You'd watch it, you watch it through their eyes, you're like, fuck, and it just made you realize how bad you sucked and how good they are, and how much more you had to work at it. That was like one of the weird things about those games, is how deep the rabbit hole goes. Like the guys who were like really good, they were so much better than someone like me who was kind of okay. Like I was okay as long as I was playing somebody who sucked, or somebody who was like at my level, who just really didn't know what they're doing. And I was fucking playing a lot. I was playing like 8 hours a day at one point in time, sometimes even more. Completely obsessed. It would fuck up all sorts of aspects of my life. I wouldn't get anything done. I would be constantly like just engrossed in improving my performance in this fucking crazy game. And playing it online too was so exciting, because you'd be playing against a bunch of people, and these people would be, in real time, essentially. There was a little bit of lag in between when you would shoot and when it would show up on the screen, depending upon how fast your connection was. But if you had a pretty decent connection, like cable modem or something like that, and, the person was near you, like fairly close in the same city or something like that, or at least in the same state, you'd get like really commensurate pings, and you would have these awesome matches where you'd be basically playing in real time against each other. It's just so exciting. And these levels that you would play on, if you've never played a 3D shooter like Unreal or Quake or Doom, or there's a bunch of them now, but these games that you would play, the graphics would be so intense. There'd be all these wild maps that you would play on. It was just really exciting, and so much more exciting than any other game or any other thing that I'd ever done before, outside of fighting in a competitive way. It was just completely engrossing. So I really had a problem with it for a long time. If you listen to this podcast for, any length of episodes, I'm sure it's come up more than once. I know I talk about the same things over and over again sometimes, and that's unfortunate. But I always feel like somebody listening doesn't know that story, and if I don't tell that story, it's not going to make sense. The people that are the hardcore people that have heard this podcast, listened to 100+ episodes, you probably have heard that story, but The real issue is how many people that are new, that are tuning in for the first time, haven't. I don't want to leave it out just because I'm worried that someone's already heard it. So I always try to put that caveat in it. For those of you who have heard this before, I'm sorry. So my video game career, as far as I wouldn't call it a career, obsession, my period of obsession lasted a few years. And I eventually had to quit cold turkey. I had to walk away because it was just really interfering with my life. And here's another story that I've told before, but I'll tell it again just because people haven't heard it. There was a guy who was a manager at the Comedy Store. He was a really nice guy. His name was Rob. And Rob was in the back of the Comedy Store once, and he said he was addicted to Everquest. And Everquest was like World of Warcraft. It was one of those role-playing games, those multi-person weird world games where you know, I'm a sorcerer, and you have a cloak and go get a bag of gold, and there's wacky fucking games. But he was super addicted to it. And one of the things that he said, I'm so good at making money in the game world, but so bad at making money in the real world. And the way he said it was like this revelation, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? He was really devastated. And he was sitting there, he's pale, looked like he hadn't seen the sun in weeks. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping right. His eyes were all fucked up from staring at a computer screen every day. And that was the moment, I think, where I realized, like, oh, yeah, like, these fucking things will sap you of your life. Like, it might be fun while it's happening, but when it's over, it's not fun. Like, the memories, they're weird memories. Like, if you play a game, like, say if you play a baseball game and you knock a home run out of the park and everybody cheers and you run the bases and you high-five your teammates, you have a good time, that's a real memory. But if you play a guy in a video game and you play for 8 hours and you beat him in some crazy match, when it's over, you don't feel like anything really happened. I wonder if that's the case if someone's playing in a major tournament. Maybe it was just me because I had the thought in my head that I was wasting my time, like that I should be doing other things. I have things that I need to be doing, and I'm fucking off and playing this video game. And so I had like a negative attachment to the idea of playing a game. And maybe if I was like one of those dudes in like one of those StarCraft games, I don't know if you're familiar at all with video games, but if you are familiar, you know that they have these crazy StarCraft tournaments in Korea. And I guess they have them in America too, and they maybe Europe as well. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. But in Korea, I know they're huge, and they fill up arenas. I'm talking like a fucking coliseum, like 25,000 people. And they have these giant screens, and people watch these guys play video games in real time. And they cheer, and they know like the moves. So when someone's doing something good, they get crazy. And when someone's making a mistake, they're like, oh no. It's weird. It's weird to watch. And I believe there's real money in it. Like, I know there's guys that do play in video games, in tournaments and in professional video game leagues that can actually make real money. And then they make that money on that Twitch thing as well. Twitch, I don't know, it's twitch.com, I guess. They somehow or another, it's been explained to me, but I forgot. There's, I guess people, I don't know if you get paid for how many people are watching you or people donate or, I don't know. They make money. They make money off of Twitch. So there's that. So maybe those people that are playing these big-time StarCraft tournaments, maybe to them it feels the same way as it would feel if you were a major league chess player and you won a tournament. It's weird because some games are highly respected and some games nobody gives a fuck about. Like games, they carry their own sort of, I don't know, not really prejudice, but games have their own little thing that are attached to them, right? Like chess. Chess is a thinking person's game. You know, if you tell someone you play chess, they're like, ooh, you must be smart, right? You tell someone you play poker, they go, oh, you degenerate gambler fuck. Like there's games that people don't appreciate. Like you tell someone, I play professional pool. They go, oh, that's a thing? It's not like something like someone saying they're a professional chess master. I'm a grand master of chess. It becomes that's like very respectable. Grandmaster is very close to Grand Wizard, though. That's one of the hilarious things about the KKK. They have wizards. The Grand Wizard. Like what? He's a Grand Wizard of the KKK. He's a wizard? You fucking child. You're a wizard? How the fuck did I get there? Point is, there's no point. I have no point. Point is, video games, they scare the shit out of me because they cost me a few years of my life. Not really. I mean, I had a good time. I had fun. Learned that I have a problem with games along the way, but I already knew that because of pool. And I knew that because of martial arts, too, because martial arts, it's very similar in a lot of ways to games. The most recent podcast with Brian Callen, we talked about that with, we were talking about Josh Waitzkin, who is a famous chess prodigy, who I feel like he was the inspiration behind the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. Looking for Bobby Fischer or Searching for Bobby Fischer? The movie with the little kid who was a chess master. I'm pretty sure Josh Waitzkin was a big part of the motivation or the inspiration for that movie. And he went on to become really fascinated by jiu-jitsu, was a student of Marcelo Garcia. I'm pretty sure he's a black belt now. He's a brown belt. Back when I was communicating with him online, we were sending emails back and forth because my friend Nathan was training with him, and he connected the two of us together. And, Josh is a fascinating guy. And he was also responsible for Marcelo Garcia putting a lot of content online, I believe. I hope I'm not wrong about this. But Marcelo, MIG in Action, was a really interesting website where Marcelo was constantly rolling with new people in his school. And he was, like people would come in and train with him. Like Eddie Bravo went down there and he trained with them, and they film it. They put the roll. The sparring session online. But they're all very friendly sparring sessions, but, competitive. And if you don't know Marcelo Garcia, he is a fascinating character himself. He's a brilliant, brilliant jiu-jitsu player who's a really nice guy. And you look at him, he's like kind of baby-faced and smiley, but he's just one of the best in the world. And he doesn't compete anymore. He's getting older and, he stepped down, but I had the opportunity to watch him compete in 2003 in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That was back when Eddie Bravo choked out Royler Gracie, or tapped out Royler Gracie with a triangle choke. He was the first American to ever tap a Gracie. And in that main tournament, this huge Abu Dhabi submission tournament, the star of the show was Marcelo Garcia. He was without a doubt the star of the show. He fought this guy. He had a match with this guy, Victor Shaolin Ribeiro, who was a very respected jiu-jitsu guy, and he choked him unconscious. And it was just a wild scramble. He caught his back, and Shaolin tried to roll out of it, and Marcelo just sunk it in deeper and deeper. And before Shaolin could even tap, he was out cold. And Marcelo was just running through the competition. I remember we were all watching him going, holy shit, who is this guy? Just came out of nowhere and was just so dominant and so dynamic. And he had some really specific moves that he liked to hit. And particularly the way he would take people's backs. He was so good at chokes. And he also had a really scientific approach where he wouldn't... I wonder if you guys can hear that. The fan just kicked on. Do you care? No one cares, right? Shut this bitch off. There it goes. But he had an interesting approach where he had a few techniques that he would do, but he would do them extremely well. Like, he didn't have this gigantic arsenal that he would attack with. He would attack with guillotines, and he would attack with rear naked chokes. And there was a lot of things that he wouldn't do. He wasn't a big guy. He wasn't like a big muscular guy, which is one of the more interesting things about him. When you look at him, he wasn't a scary guy. He wasn't like, there's certain jiu-jitsu guys, you look at them and you go, Jesus. Like, Rousimar Palhares is one of the best examples of that because he's like just built like a freak. Like he's built like the comic book version of Wolverine. He's a short guy with giant muscles, just thick fucking neck, just terrifying guy. Rips people's legs apart too, and doesn't necessarily let go when they tap. He's kind of known for that, which makes him even scarier. He's injured a lot of guys, but he looks like a scary guy. When you look at Marcelo Garcia, he's like a really smiley guy. And because of the fact that he wasn't not that he wasn't physically strong, but he wasn't a freak athlete. He wasn't just explosive, dominant, just really muscular guy. He developed just razor sharp technique and leverage. And that's how he won his matches which made it even more impressive, really. And his main techniques were chokes. So most of the time he's putting guys to sleep or forcing them to tap. But there was a lot of techniques that were really common, well-respected techniques that he just never used, and he would openly talk about them, like the Kimura, which is a famous technique. It's actually called the double wrist lock in catch wrestling. Catch wrestling, when people think about pro wrestling, when you think about pro wrestling, you think about like Hulk Hogan and The Rock and the theatrics and these pre-scripted events. But wrestling used to be, at one point in time, it used to be an actual match. Like there was actual professional wrestling. And there was a style of wrestling called catch, or catch as catch can. I think that's how they would say it. And catch wrestling, there's like these guys like Carl Gotch and Farmer Burns and a lot of guys who wound up teaching some modern day MMA fighters and grappling competitors like Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett is probably the most famous and the most successful catch wrestling enthusiast and practitioner. Like Josh Barnett has tapped out some really famous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitors like Hiron Gracie or Dean Lister. Dean Lister being incredibly impressive because Dean hadn't tapped to anybody in, I want to say at least 10 years when Josh finished him in this competition called Metamoris. But that's what wrestling used to be. And they had a bunch of submissions. Like a lot of the submissions that we think of as jiu-jitsu submissions also existed in catch wrestling. And I guess when people are, grappling, I mean, the people have been grappling through the beginning of time. I mean, when people first started fighting, that's probably how they fought each other. They probably grabbed each other and got close enough to bite or hang on to each other. And then slowly people started realizing, hey, when I do this, it seems to keep the guy away from me. Or when I do this, I can hold on to him. Or I used to hold him like this, but now I realize when I hold him like this, it works even better. And when I do this, it really hurts. And when I do this, it doesn't hurt. And so they, back in the days of the Spartans and the Romans, if you look at some of the statues, like I was in Italy recently, and we went to Rome, and we looked at some of the artwork of the Vatican in particular. There's just a lot of statues of guys wrestling. A lot of looks like grappling holds and grappling positions. So it's been around forever. But what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really was is these guys who are not very big, Elio and Carlos Gracie. They weren't the biggest guys in the world. They were small, and they weren't physically strong. And they figured out how to use technique and leverage to overcome physical strength. And one of the matches that Elio got in early in his career, he would have these crazy matches with people. He had a match with this guy named Kimura. And Kimura caught him in what catch wrestling would call a double wrist lock, where you clamp down one hand on the wrist, and then you throw an overhook around the arm and clamp your other hand down on your wrist. So you have one hand on his wrist, one hand on your wrist, and it creates this awesome fulcrum point, and you can manipulate someone's arm. But Marcelo Garcia always felt like that position required a lot of physical strength, and he wasn't a very strong guy, so he just abandoned it. He just decided it wasn't an option, and he was just going to concentrate primarily on things that were sort of what just had ultimate technique to them. And chokes pretty much have ultimate technique. And one of the reasons why a choke is an ultimate technique is if someone lands it perfectly, you go unconscious. Whereas an arm bar, like guys have gotten their arm broken before and come back and fought and won, and had their arm awfully hyperextended and come back and won. Like a perfect example in jiu-jitsu is Roger Gracie versus Jacare. It's a very famous match between two guys that are competing in MMA now, but back when they were fighting in jiu-jitsu, they were amongst the best in the world. And Roger Gracie caught Jacare in an armbar and snapped his arm. And Jacare would not tap. He would not tap. And he fought out of it. And eventually, he was ahead on points when he got up, when he got out of the armbar, but his arm was just destroyed. So if I remember correctly, I think he might have even tucked his arm inside his belt and just kept going until the time limit ran out, and then raised his one good arm and got all excited and, had won because he gutted it out and would not tap when this guy snapped his fucking arm. And this is, by the way, professional jiu-jitsu. This isn't even MMA. This is not like a Ronda Rousey match or a Conor McGregor fight where they're making millions and millions of dollars. I don't know how much money this guy was getting paid for this jiu-jitsu match in his sponsors and how much it was actually worth to him. But as far as his pride, it was worth it to him to actually get his arm broken instead of tapping, which is fucking crazy. So, boy, that's a long and circuitous. I've lost my own train of thought. My train of thought was that there's certain techniques that you could really hurt a guy, but they don't have to quit. And Roger Gracie landed the perfect armbar on Jacare, broke his arm, and Jacare still won the fight, on points at least. I mean, if they had been fighting old school Gracie way, Roger probably would have eventually got him because Jacare really couldn't defend himself correctly anymore. And he would eventually, since he's only got one arm to defend himself, Roger probably would have wound up choking him or catching him in something else. But, it's entirely possible he wouldn't, and it's entirely possible that Jacare, even with a broken arm, could have gotten him. But the point being, when you choke someone to sleep instead of break their arm, they can't do anything. They're done. You put them to sleep. And that was Marcelo Garcia's philosophy. He realized that he could just put someone to sleep, and then there could be no debate as to whether or not he was going to win, and no debate as to whether or not the move was actually efficient or effective. It was obviously effective. The guy was asleep. And that's what we saw in Brazil when he fought Shaolin and just put him to sleep. I mean, in seconds, too. It's a crazy, crazy video that you could watch on YouTube. So Josh Waitzkin, who was a student of Marcelo's, put all of Marcelo's moves and sort of like as something that people can learn from and grow from, and put it all online. So, games, Doom podcast. So Josh, who is obviously, because of he's a chess prodigy, is fascinated by games, and chess being one of the most intellectually inspiring games, got really into jiu-jitsu as well. So I just know, because of the way I got into martial arts and the way I got into video games and pool, it's just, there's something about those weird challenges that can really excite the mind. The only problem is I don't necessarily know if they have the same kind of real-world benefits as getting really good at a sport or getting really good at an actual physical activity where you move around and do things. So, I don't know. But we will eventually do a Doom podcast, and I will prepare myself where I make sure that there's no fucking way I get completely and totally addicted anymore. Because I've been there. It's not the move. I don't have time for that anymore. Other questions here. Who will do international pay-per-view instead of you? If you don't know what that question is about, I decided recently, at one point in time, I was going to not work for the UFC anymore. I was going to just do these Fight Companion podcasts that I do with Eddie Bravo and Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen sometimes, and other people sometimes too when those guys are out of town. I did one recently with Joey Diaz. It was one of the best ones ever. But what the fight companions are is we just sit around, we watch the fights, and we talk some shit. And I'm not working that way. I just work a little bit too much. Between stand-up comedy, writing stand-up comedy, doing podcasts, researching the guests, researching subjects, researching potential guests, and then life. All the other things that I have to do, whether it's exercise, yoga, forget about family time, all that other stuff is, that also, there's a lot of time that is already accounted for. And then there was the UFC, and I had to figure out what things what things I could cut back on. I wasn't going to cut back on family life. I don't want to cut back on my recreational activities because they keep me sane. For me, I need a bunch of stuff that I'm interested in. I can't just work. Even though work is awesome, I love doing stand-up. I even love doing the UFC. I love it. I love it. I mean, it's a very exciting job, and it's an honor to be able to do. But it's work, and it requires energy, and it requires focus. And I feel like at the end of the day, you only have so much energy and so much focus. And you could be in a situation where you almost are too fortunate and you have too many things that you enjoy. And that's where I kind of found myself. So that's what I decided. I decided what I'm going to do is I am going to only do North American pay-per-view. That's it. No more Fox shows, no more long international flights. Because, first of all, those things fucking wreck your body. They wreck me. I would do them, and then for days. Like, I just got back from Italy. It took me like a week, like at least 4 or 5 days before I felt normal again. It just, your body's all fucked up. You're jet lagged. You're confused. You're exhausted. You just feel like you're at 60% all the time. You're always trying to push through, and it's a drag. Enthusiasm and having vitality, like physical vitality and feeling good and feeling healthy, is a big factor in life for me. That's a huge thing. I like feeling good. I like being healthy. When I know something is going to make me feel physically bad and make me feel unhealthy, I try to avoid it as much as possible. There's sometimes I give in, like maybe I'll have a couple of drinks with some friends and we get a little crazy, and then next day I'm like, oh, you dummy. I've done that before, obviously, but even like a hangover, I feel better in a day. Those fucking jet lags, like a flight from Sydney, just knocked over the phone, a flight from Sydney, Australia, that shit takes me a long time to get better from. I don't want to be complaining here. My point being, I try to avoid things that make me feel shitty physically. And unfortunately, a lot of flying makes you feel shitty, and especially flying long hours. So who's going to do the international pay-per-views? I think the way they're doing it now is Dan Hardy, who's a former fighter, and he's been a guest on this podcast. He's a fucking awesome guy, super smart dude, super tuned in, really interesting and intelligent guy. And Dan, I actually trained with Dan for years. Back in the day when Dan used to train at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, whenever he was in town, he was getting ready for a fight, he would come to Eddie Bravo's gym and train. I trained with him multiple times. Super nice guy. So Dan Hardy will probably do a lot of them. And then, of course, Brian Stan, who's fantastic, who's also been on this podcast. He'll do a lot of them. And then there's also Kenny Florian, who's also great. He'll do, I don't know how they work that out, like who does what, but those are the ones who are going to do it. So that will be the answer to that, you fucks. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this new ownership thing either. there's a bunch of new people that took over the UFC now. The UFC is still going to be run by Dana White, which is one of the reasons why I decided to stay. Because, Dana and I are close. We've been good friends for a long time. And one of the things that I was really nervous about was the idea that Dana was going to leave and some suits were going to take over. And then I was going to have meetings with people. They were going to tell me what I could or couldn't say or give me advice on how to do it or any of that stupid shit. I was like, fuck this. That was like, it was answering the question for me. Like, what am I going to cut back in my life? As soon as I heard that they were thinking about selling, I was like, well, that answered it for me. But as time went on and I really thought more and more about it, I really thought that I would miss it, and I don't want to. And also, I don't mean to sound corny, but all the love that I got from people online, it influenced my thinking too. It made me think that I probably should think about sticking it out. So that's the answer to that. What do I think about the Fermi Paradox? That's an interesting question. If you don't know what the Fermi Paradox is, the actual definition is, here, I'll find it here. The actual definition is, it's about aliens. The question is, here it is. Where is everybody? The idea is, if there is named after, I'll go to the Wikipedia. The Fermi Paradox is named after Enrico Fermi. It's the apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence and the high probability estimates, those given by the Drake equation, for the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations. And the Drake equation is, it's an equation that's, here, I'll go to the Wikipedia of that. It's used to arrive at an estimate of the number of active, communicative, extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Fermi Paradox is, if you look at all of the stars in our galaxy alone, billions of stars, and billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of stars, hundreds of billions of galaxies, many of them which are many, many, many years older than our galaxy, many years older than our planet. The question is, why haven't these aliens contacted us? Where is everybody? So that's the question, the Fermi Paradox. I've thought about this a lot, so I'm actually happy about this question. I have a feeling that our ideas about what a society or what civilization does as it advances are based entirely on our idea that we are dependent upon the monkey body, that we're dependent upon the physical flesh and the idea of being somewhere in a measurable way, that's the only way you can experience something. I think that's an error on our part. I don't think that we are going to be attached to the physical body forever. This sounds like hippie nonsense, silly woo-woo bullshit, but this is my thought behind it. I think that, first of all, we are moving closer and closer every day to being integrated with technology. And by integrated with technology, I think initially it's going to happen where there's going to be some sort of a chip that we have in our body, whether it's something that we use that it helps us, it enhances our vision, or it enhances our mental function, or our ability to communicate with each other, or our ability to access information. It's entirely possible that it might start out as some sort of a helmet that we put on that lets us, like maybe like a ball cap with electrodes on it. And you put this thing on and it stimulates areas of your brain that allow you to see these images, and maybe perhaps like some sort of a screen like Minority Report, like it'll be in front of you where you'll be able to access data, where you'll be able to ask it questions. I mean, I have this Hey Siri function. We have this Hey Siri function on our phones that people get pissed off when I say those words on the podcast, because if you have an Android phone, you don't know this, but if you have an iPhone, you have that option on. If someone says those words, Hey Siri, your phone goes ba-ding, like you're asking it a question. So you say, Hey Siri, where's the fella get a blowjob around here? or whatever. Ask it some questions, and it'll actually answer you. You could say, hey, Siri, call Duncan. It'll call Duncan. Hey, Siri, navigate to the Hollywood Bowl. It'll give you the directions to get to the Hollywood Bowl in real time. It's amazing. And it's science fiction. It's something that just a few years ago was completely outside of our imagination. We really didn't think that they were going to have something that sat on the table next to you, some small little sliver of glass and metal and whatever the fuck it's made out of. Electrodes? No, it's in there. Silicone? You could talk to that thing and say, hey, Siri, and it would, you could say, hey, Siri, what is the Fermi Paradox? And it would Google it for you. This is all something that's going on right now. And this is just one step. It's one step in what is really, as long as human beings stay alive, as long as we don't get nuked, as long as we don't murk ourselves, as long as we don't get fucked up by a super volcano or an asteroid or some polar shift or some natural disaster, as long as that doesn't happen, and we just, obviously not me, but people smarter than me who do this kind of shit, they're going to continue to innovate. And as they continue to innovate, we're going to get technology that is more and more powerful, and I think more and more integrated in our lives and in our physical bodies. I think it's going to reach, there's going to be a bottleneck where holding a device in your hand, it just doesn't have the same effect or do the same amount of things as they could do if they actually put it in your head. And I think people are going to fucking volunteer for it. I think they're going to volunteer for it like they volunteer for braces, like they get eyeglasses at the optometrist, like they get fake tits. People they're going to get these things put in their bodies, and it's going to be really common. And maybe it won't even have to be in your brain. Maybe that'll be the holdback. People are like, I don't want something in my brain. And they'll go, well, we don't have to do that. We put it in your wrist. It'll communicate with your brain through the nervous system or through electrical impulses, through your tissue itself. And maybe that, along with some sort of a hat that you put on that allows you to interface with the internet, that's going to be a step. But somewhere along the line, if you listen to guys like Ray Kurzweil, Ray believes that you're going to eventually be able to download your consciousness into a computer, which of course gets really fucking weird, because what are you then? Are you still, here's the question. If you download your consciousness into a computer, are you still existing in the physical sense? So if you exist in the physical sense and your consciousness is downloaded into a computer, do the two get to talk to each other? Or are you like, or do you end your life in a physical sense and then begin one in a digital sense? And is it even a life? But if it exists in some sort of a matrix-like state, if they can figure out a way, there's a lot of people today that they're not happy with the life that they've been handed, with the roll of the dice. Maybe they have physical deformities. Maybe they have poor health. There's a lot of people that just got a shitty hand when it comes to life. Like life is not even in the cards that it deals. I don't have to tell you this. You all know this, right? And if someone came along, like what was that guy's name in The Matrix? The guy who wound up selling everybody out, who just said he wanted to be famous or rich or something like that. He's eating a steak in The Matrix and he decides to give in. That kind of existence, if someone comes along and says, look, you don't have to live this life in the physical sense anymore, instead of being dependent upon this monkey body and the tooth, fang, and claw of natural selection and evolution and just the struggle of being a fucking human being. Instead of that, you can exist in this perfect state where you are constantly in love and just filled with joy and having a wonderful life filled with only positive experiences. And you can enjoy this with no negative repercussions. You could just, you can become a part of the matrix, a part of the thing, whatever they're going to call it. And from there, you will be the architect of your existence. You'll be able to decide. This idea that, well, the bad days, they make you feel good about the good days. You know, there's no sunshine without rain. You know, you got to have good and evil. Well, that's here. That's in this state, in this physical state. Yeah, you have to have good and you have to have evil as we know it right now in this life. We do appreciate our loved ones when something terrible happens, when there's a tragedy happens. We do appreciate the people that are alive when someone we care about dies. Those are all true. But is that the only way that we can appreciate each other? Is that the only way we can enjoy life? Some people would say yes, but I don't think they'd really know. I think that's just, we're basing that on what we have experienced and what we currently, the data we're pulling from being a human being living on Earth. If someone can engineer, and this is not something that might happen in a year or in 100 years, but we might be talking about something that happens in 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Who knows? But around the same time where we think that a technologically based civilization would develop the capability of star travel, of being able to travel not just into another solar system, but perhaps into another galaxy, maybe hundreds of galaxies away. Who knows? But that kind of incredible ability to control your environment, we might not ever get there. And we might not ever get there because we realize that being there physically is not nearly as important as the experience. Like, I've often said this about psychedelics, that people say, oh, you have a psychedelic drug experience. Yeah, you're imagining things that are happening, you're hallucinating. Yeah, well, sort of yes, but no. Like, it might not actually be happening. Like, if you have this experience where you take a psychedelic drug and you are transported to the center of the universe and you are communicating with love in the form of beautifully lit neon geometric patterns that are constantly changing and morphing, and they're filling you up with wisdom and joy and appreciation. Well, people say, well, that's a hallucination. You're taking a drug and you're having a hallucination. Maybe. But either way, the experience is still the same. Like the experience of meeting God because you took mushrooms and having this incredible meeting with the divine force of the universe. If that happens in real life, or if that happens in a psychedelic drug trip, the feeling and the experience are still the same. Like, it might not be a real physical thing in the sense of you might not be able to take it and put it in a pillowcase and throw it on a scale and weigh it, but you can't. Who's to say you could ever do that anyway? Like, it's the exact same experience of meeting God. It might be just as good, is my point. So this idea that, well, I don't want to live in the matrix, man. I want to live in the real world. Are you sure? What's the benefit of the real world? I mean, is the only reason why we think that the real world contains some sort of benefit for us is because that's the only model that we have to go on, that this is the pattern that we've been following our whole lives, that this idea that, you live and then you die and then you do your best along the way, and sometimes you got to push through the pain, and sometimes you got to fucking get up in the morning when you don't want to get up, and you got to work hard, and when you work hard it pays off and you get a good life, and your discipline equals your freedom, and there's a lot of thoughts that we have about living life that are applicable to this physical, knock on wood life, this real life that you and I are experiencing right now. Everybody listening to this podcast, you had to plug your phone in, you had to listen to it on a computer, you had to touch some things, and something had to happen for you to experience something in a real sense. But that's just because this is what we're used to. We're definitely not used to, if you talk about human beings, if you went back 200 years ago, we're definitely not used to the internet. We're definitely not used to movies. 200 years ago, we didn't even have fucking cars. If you wanted a picture of something, you had to draw it. We're used to all these things now. We're used to photographs. The idea of not being able to take photos on vacation is alien. The idea of having to get in a boat and travel across the country. Like I was talking about how I just got back from Italy. If I lived in the 1800s, I would have had to been on a boat for months. I would have had to have made it from California all the way to New York, and then would have had to have been in a fucking boat and gone across the ocean the same way my grandparents did when they were little kids. My grandparents came over here from Italy when they were like, I think my grandfather was like 7 years old, I think he said. I would have had to have done all that stuff. It's not going to happen, right? So the idea of no photos is alien. The idea of no movies, no cameras, no TV shows, no radio. There's no radio back then. What the fuck? You couldn't tune into a radio show in 1800. They didn't have them. They didn't exist. All these things that are now a normal, everyday part of our lives were alien just a few hundred years ago, which in terms of human civilization and certainly in terms of the life of human beings, the existence of human beings, it's not even a blink of an eye. This is all new, and we couldn't imagine life without it. I think if time keeps going, or if rather civilization keeps going, over time, if we don't do something incredibly stupid or get fucked up in some sort of a natural catastrophe, we're going to come up with an ability to manipulate our environment, our world, our perceptions, our mind, to create an artificial world, an artificial universe that's impossible for our little fucking chimpanzee brains to imagine. I don't think we have the capacity to connect all the dots. I think with each new invention, it opens up a new complete realm of possibility. Like you couldn't say to someone in 1800, one day you're going to have Google, because they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, one day you're going to be able to talk to your phone. What the fuck is a phone? Well, one day you're going to be able to talk to your electronic device. What's electronics? What the fuck are you saying? What are you, a wizard? You would be saying something to them that didn't make any sense at all. And that, I think, is how we have to look at the possibility for 200 or 300 years from now. There's going to be new things that get invented along the way. And, in the Old West, it was electricity, metals, new ways of connecting things, and then teletype and Morse code and all these different things got invented before they invented computers, the internet, the world we're dealing with right now. When you look at 200-300 years from now, I think it's entirely possible that these ideas that we have about what the future is going to be like, there's big chunks missing. There's chunks missing from our thought process, and it's because these paradigm-shifting revelations, inventions, and innovations, they haven't occurred yet. And when those things do occur, I think it's going to forever change what the future will be. And as these things occur, whether it's the ability to download consciousness or whether it's the ability to record thoughts in your own mind, record memories, dreams, that's a real possibility. What they're thinking is there's going to be a time where you are going to have a hard drive, like a virtual hard drive, or a physical hard drive, rather. Like someone's going to put an SD card slot in your head. Not an SD card slot, but something probably much smaller. It might even be as small as, like Ray Kurzweil has said, as a cell, like a blood cell, like one red blood cell in your body. That's a machine or a computer or a camera or some sort of recording device. This thing may be able to record your thoughts, record how it feels to be you. Like, say if you, fill in the blank. If you're, I don't know who, Ashton Kutcher. Let's pretend you're Ashton Kutcher. If Ashton Kutcher decides to record his thoughts and his life and his day and to take it and upload it to the web, and you could feel what it feels like to be him. Or maybe someone who you would always love to find out how they think. like maybe Chris Rock, like a great comedian. Like, how does Chris Rock look at the world? Where's he coming up with his material? How does this guy think? How does he feel about himself, Like a guy like Louis C.K., who's a very self-deprecating guy. How does he feel about himself, Maybe a guy like John Jones, a great fighter, or Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. How does he feel about himself? How does he think? What does it feel like to be him? What does it feel like to be Mighty Mouse for a day? What does it feel like to go through a workout? You could actually feel it. You could experience it. You could be him for a short period of time. I think that is inevitable. I really do. I think that is as inevitable as recording a picture of your kid blowing out their birthday cake and you watching a video on your iPhone. When you're doing that, when you're videotaping someone's wedding, when you're videotaping a sporting event, when you're holding your camera up at the UFC and you're watching the fights, you're capturing time. You are capturing an image of something. We're so used to it. We don't even understand how fucking insane it is. It is so insane that you could take something that's so small, it's not even as thick as a deck of cards. You take it out of your pocket and it could film hours of shit. Hours. You can capture hours of images, and then you show it to me, and you could have been on the other side of the world. You could be in New Zealand, and you could be filming some insane mountain view that was in the movie The Hobbit. And it could be you and your friends and you're backpacking there and you're laughing and joking and you make a video, and then you can send it to me through the fucking air. And it could reach my phone on the other side of the planet in seconds. This is nuts. It's nuts. It is completely fucking bananas. But we're really used to it. And it stands to reason to me that this ability is only going to accelerate. They're only going to get better. It's only going to get more in depth. It's only going to get the experience. It's not just going to be visual. Right now it's visual and it's two-dimensional. It's going to be virtual. It's going to turn into a virtual experience. Then it's going to be something that involves much more than just the simple senses of sound and sight. There's going to be feeling. There's going to be neurological responses. There's going to be memory. Then it's going to be emotional. You're going to be able to feel emotions. I think we're going to be able to record thoughts and ideas in the same way we're able to encode and record visual images like photographs or audio like this podcast. Like, I'm sitting here right now. What time is it? 6:34. Friday, July 29th in Atlanta. I'm recording this. You might be listening to this 100 years from now in the future. And you might be saying, whoa. Like, I was listening to this Alan Watts recording the other day that was on universal basic income, which is a constant subject right now. It's been going on around the idea of if you actually just gave people money so that they could live, so they didn't have to worry about making a living, it would open them up to a lot of other possibilities. And this idea that putting people on welfare or the dole, it just makes them lazy, might not necessarily be true, and that it actually might be better if we didn't look at it that way, if we just looked at it the way of once your basic needs are covered, then you're free to express yourself in a much more natural way without desperation. And that desperation doesn't always mean you're going to make the best decisions. And it really would cost us less if we gave people money. Okay. Anyway, point being, this is an Alan Watts discussion where Alan Watts was making a speech about this from the 1960s. So it was more than 50 years old. I think somewhere around 50. Point being, it's entirely possible that this recording that I'm making right now, someday somebody might listen to 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, and they'll laugh. They'll laugh at how wrong I got it, or maybe they'll laugh at how I called it. And we will be living in some sort of a strange world where reality is not something that you measure. You can't like take a ruler to it or, and measure the temperature of it or put it on a scale. It might be something that exists in some sort of a quasi reality setting where it's real, you're experiencing it, but it doesn't exist in a physical form. That's entirely possible. That's our future. It's entirely possible that we, through technology, figure out a way to create not just an alternative dimension, but infinite alternative dimensions, infinite alternative existences. So this idea that we're just going to get to a certain point where we realize that we could build a spaceship the size of the Empire State Building and fucking shoot off to Alpha Centauri and set up shop there and, find some snails and turn them into people. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to be traveling. I don't think that's the future. I think we may, for the next foreseeable future, we might be sending robots to Mars like we're doing now, and we might send them off to Pluto and to these other planets, and we might get invaluable data about the nature of our solar system. And there's this planet that they think is outside of Pluto's orbit, past the Kuiper Belt now. They're calling Planet X, and people have talked about this forever. There's some giant ass planet out there that's, I think it's more than 4 times larger than Earth, and they're pretty sure it exists, like 90-something% sure. Yeah, that's all awesome and fascinating and amazing and beautiful. But I have a feeling that our future doesn't exist in a physical sense the way we think it does. I think we're married to this idea because it's all we've ever known. But I don't necessarily think it's all we're capable of. I think it's entirely possible that one day we might create a whole new world. And this also might be possible with the advent of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is another fucking rabbit hole, because if you want to get your mind blown, listen to, I don't think it was the last one. I think Sam Harris and I have talked about it twice. We talked about it on, I think, the last podcast, and maybe even more in depth the podcast before. It might be both of them. I'd have to go back and remember. I've done more than 800 fucking podcasts now, so even though my memory's pretty decent, I really lose track of which one was what and what was happening when. But the point being, the conversation that I had with him about artificial intelligence was a mind blower, a real mind blower, where it's, in my eyes, it's one of those things, just like we're talking about technological innovation. I think everyone would say, just conservative people that are dreamers, if we start talking about the potential for the future, is there going to be innovation? Yes. Everyone would say yes. Everyone would say yes. If people don't blow themselves up, if we don't get hit by an asteroid, if Yellowstone doesn't explode and wipe out everyone in North America, will we continue to make better electronics? Will we continue to innovate? Will we continue to make new inventions? Everybody would say yes. Everybody. Well, if that's the case, artificial intelligence is almost inevitable. If it's 100 years from now, if it's 200 years from now, whatever it is, one day, eventually, they're going to figure out a way to make something that can think for itself. I mean, Tesla has fucking cars that drive themselves now. You can press auto drive or whatever the button is that you press, and these fucking things will drive. They hit the brakes, they make turns, they follow the navigation system, they have sensors that detect cars, they brake at traffic. I mean, it's fucking nuts. And it's just crept up on us. Nobody saw this coming 10 years ago. Nobody thought in 10 years. Nobody thought in 2006, 10 years from now, we're going to have driverless cars. Cars that you take your hand off the wheel. There's a hilarious photo of a guy. They snapped pictures of him on the highway. I think it was outside of San Francisco, where he was asleep at the wheel going to work, and his car was driving down the highway. This is all new, right? And what is it going to be like 10 years from now? I don't think we know. I think we could guess. I think we could have beautiful ideas. But I think when every new invention gets created and every new door that gets opened up by new technologies, it creates the potential for a gang of other new, exponentially increasing new technologies. So with artificial intelligence, I think it's entirely possible that we can literally create something that creates universes. Something that creates universes that don't exist in a physical sense. Like you go to the moon, you pick up moon rocks, you come back to Earth. But rather something that exists in another dimension. That we find portals or gateways, or that we find frequencies. I've always thought that it's possible that planets themselves, or that rather reality itself, is like a station on the dial. And I've read that scientists believe that there are at least 11 dimensions. I don't know how they understand this. I don't know how that's when they get to those, those yellow legal notepads where those guys scribble shit down on it. You go, what the fuck is that? But you have to be a theoretical physicist in order to understand what the fuck they're writing. I think those guys have come up with some equation that they all agree upon, where they believe that it is entirely possible that there are 11 dimensions, at least. And this is today, in 2016, right? If you asked scientists in 1955, they'd probably look at you like you have fucking 3 heads. That's a blink of an eye. 1955 compared to 2016, it is a blink of an eye. It seems like 60 plus years for us, but it ain't shit in terms of the world, in terms of human history, and in terms of the evolution of this bizarre talking monkey. It's nothing. And in that time, things have changed in spectacular ways. I think it's entirely possible that through especially the invention and innovation of artificial intelligence and its ability to innovate, its ability to improve upon ideas that human beings have created, because that was one of the most mind-blowing parts about the Sam Harris podcast, was he said that within weeks they will be able to do 10,000 plus years of what it would take us as far as innovation. So the world will change so fast once artificial intelligence once it goes live, once Skynet goes live. The world is going to change so much that it's almost impossible for us to understand. It's impossible for us to guess. I'm standing up here now because I'm kind of freaking myself out, and and my throat is getting a little scratchy. That's what I think about the Fermi Paradox. I think that we're going to outgrow this idea of being somewhere in a physical sense. And I think that if there are aliens, they're going to contact us through our own minds. They're going to contact us through dreams. Aliens might exist in the form of imagination. Imagination itself might be like a kind of energy, almost like a life form. If you look around at the world, obviously imagination is something that, it comes out of the brain and people create things, and it's just, the idea that it's a life form is ridiculous. I get it. Yes, you're right. But the imagination is responsible for every single physical thing that human beings have ever created. This building that I'm in right now came about because of the imagination. The phone that I'm talking on came about because of the imagination. Without the thought of these ideas, without someone saying, what would happen if we took this mud and turned it into a square and then dried it out? Could we make a brick? Ooh. And then if I stack a brick on top of a brick, dude, I'm making a wall. And that all came out of the mind. It came out of an idea. How amazing would it be if we found out that those ideas themselves were alive, that is the way these life forms express themselves, much like the way disease expresses itself inside your body. Like when you catch a cold, right, you have a life form that's growing and feeding off of you. And your body's out of balance. Your immune system is battling this virus, this disease. You could look at it on a microscope. Ooh, look, it's the staph virus, or it's the flu. It's malaria. Ooh, he's got the malaria virus. Well, what is that thing? Well, that thing is a life form. It's some sort of an existing living thing that's trying to multiply and grow, and ultimately it would like to kill your body. It would like to take your body over, and it would love to spread itself to a bunch of other people and take out a bunch of folks. And that's what happens every year with the flu or every year with malaria. And if you want a harrowing tale of what it's like to have malaria, listen to my friend Justin Wren, who's been on the podcast many times, who was just on the last episode, who goes to the Congo regularly to build wells for the pygmies. Just an amazing guy, just beautiful person who is doing this incredible thing and helping these people. But this motherfucker's caught malaria 3 times now. It's scary shit. Malaria is some sort of a weird life form, right? What if ideas were life forms? They're just life forms that exist in a non-physical way, and you can make yourself more accessible. You can catch these ideas better. You can catch these life forms. You can catch these things that will ultimately lead to the transformation of the very world around you. They've developed air conditioning. These ideas have made heat. They figured out how to harness fire. They figured out how to take rubber tires and put them around metal wheels, attach it to a frame, and allow you to fall asleep inside of it as it takes you to work. That's all because of imagination. That imagination is something that you can't measure. It's not a physical thing. You can't show it. You don't take like a litmus test. You can't go to the store and, hey, I tested positive for imagination. No, it's just there, and you access it, and you sit around, you daydream, and you lay on your back in the grass, and you come up with an idea. What the fuck is that? We don't know. We don't know. We totally take it for granted. But if you look around at this fucking spectacular world that you see in front of you when you step outside of your house, this bizarre world, that if you lived in a natural world, if you lived in a jungle, or if you lived in a mountain setting and you had never seen human civilization, you were confronted with it for the first time, you would freak the fuck out. You would be like, what kind of bizarre thing is creating these enormous structures with glass and stone and on a scale that is... It is impossible to comprehend a human being creating a skyscraper. One person? No. They had to work together. How many people? Hundreds. Okay. How'd they do it? They have metal. They use machines. What? Machines. Yeah. They have combustion engines. What's that? Well, they're explosions. It's controlled explosions inside of a metal structure that powers these gears. And these gears can lift up things thousands of pounds and carry them through the air. And then they put these glass walls on top of these buildings. Like, what the fuck? This is all because of the imagination. And this idea that the imagination is just some sort of like, oh, he's imagining things, oh, silly, he's a dreamer. It's been kind of put in our head since we were young, because we're taught to be pragmatic, or we're taught to be disciplined, and taught to go out there and get things done and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and all these like hardcore sort of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, organic ways of looking at productivity in life. But ultimately, this imagination is going to lead us to create something that can change the very nature of what life is. So if that made any sense at all to anybody but me, I'd be fucking shocked. But that's my answer. God damn, that was a long-ass fucking answer. It is almost 7 o'clock here, and I gotta leave soon, so maybe I'll answer one more. Thoughts on the Putin-Russia-Trump implications around the Democratic Party WikiLeaks email reveals. I think that people were saying that Trump was going to get in trouble because he told Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails, or hack the Democratic Party WikiLeaks emails. That's ridiculous. That is really ridiculous. I think that is one of the dumbest things. This idea that Trump should somehow or another be accountable and held accountable for espionage. How about the fact that the the Democrats were plotting against one of their own. How about the fact that they were working towards getting Hillary Clinton to be the nominee for the party? They're working towards that. Like, they're supposed to be impartial. He's a Democrat too. And they were actively trying to make her be the representative for the party. And then when the woman who has to step down because of the emails, she has to step down because it's revealed that they were actively plotting to get Bernie Sanders in Hillary Clinton in over Bernie Sanders. She, after she steps down, immediately gets hired by Hillary Clinton, like immediately. It's so transparent. It's hilarious. I think what I was saying earlier, that one of the good things about a guy like Gary Johnson is we're realizing how stupid this fucking two-party system is. We're being hosed. Whether you're a Hillary supporter or whether you're a Trump supporter, you have to admit that they're not ideal. Neither one of those people is ideal. You see all those people that are at the Democratic convention and they're all smiling and laughing, and they don't really believe she's ideal. They believe this is all we have right now. Hillary Clinton was giving a speech and her fucking husband, Bill, fell asleep. He fell asleep. I mean, apparently he's not in good health right now. He's not doing so hot, but he's sitting there in the audience. And if he's in such bad shape that he can't stay awake, he should be in bed somewhere. He fell asleep in the audience. That's how fucking boring and stupid these things are. And it's a hose job. And it's a hose job that I think is just going to be here for a little while longer. It's going to be like powdered wigs. It's a nonsense way to run a nation of 300 million informed people. There's too many of us now. There's too many of us, and people know too much. It's not 1800s where you needed this sort of representative government because you couldn't get to those people and they couldn't get their opinion to you. It's not the case anymore. We live in a different world. That's it. I'm going to end this fucking thing. I'm going to try to get Ian McCall on, and either I'll attach it to this podcast or I'll put it on a second one, depending on how much Ian and I talk. But this one has gone on for an hour and 34 minutes, which is, I was like, what the fuck am I going to talk about? Meanwhile, I couldn't shut the fuck up. And it's weird when I'm doing these things because you're trying to not be conscious of the fact that you're doing one of these things. So you're just trying to like let the thoughts flow. But in the meantime, it's like you have to resist the urge to think about the fact that you're talking and that you're talking into a phone and that you're trying not to fuck it up and you're trying to be as honest and transparent about your thoughts as possible while still making it entertaining. Don't say too many ums. Don't ramble too much. It's weird. I've done these before in the past, but I haven't done one like this in a long time. It just shows you how talented Bill Burr is, because that fucking guy does one of these every Monday and every Thursday. Bill Burr, if you haven't heard his podcast, it's awesome. It's the Bill Burr Monday morning podcast, but he also does a Thursday version of it, which I think he calls the Thursday afternoon Monday morning podcast. And honestly, Bill is... he's a good friend of mine and a brilliant comedian, and is also a guy who's singular in his focus. And I really admire him as a comic. And it's one of the things I was thinking about when I was thinking that maybe I would stop doing commentary. I'm like, this fucking guy just does stand-up. I mean, that's what he does. He just does his stand-up. And look at the results. They're amazing. He's always got new shit. He's always killing it. I love watching his act. He's consistently funny, but he's very singular in his focus. And anyway, I'm rambling. Bill Burr Monday Morning Podcast. Check it out. It's awesome. If you haven't heard of Bill before as a comic, he's not just one of the best alive today. He's one of the best ever. He's one of my all-time favorite stand-up comedians. So with that, let's end this fucking thing. So thanks for tuning in. I may do this again, or I might be completely fucking burnt out, or I might freak myself out about how goddamn crazy I sound when I start rambling about artificial intelligence and the birth of alternative dimensions and universes out of the mind of monkeys. But until then, all right, that's it. Goodbye. Thank you. Appreciate the fuck out of you people. And talk to you soon. Big kiss. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the podcast. And thanks to Caveman Coffee, even though I didn't drink it because I'm here in my hotel room and I just had their coffee, which is not as good. Go to cavemancoffeeco.com and find out what's up. Single source, single family, single origin deliciousness. cavemancoffeeco.com. Thanks to Ting. Go to rogan.ting.com to save $25 off of any cell phone or service. Woo-wee. Thanks also to ZipRecruiter. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan to post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. Thanks also to Ring.com. Go to Ring.com/Rogan and you can get $50 off the Ring of Security kit. That's Ring.com/Rogan. All right, folks, that's it. Podcast is over. Oh, yeah, Onnit. Go to Onnit, ONNIT. Use the code word Rogan. Save 10% off any and all supplements. I'm taking my Onnit Total Gut Health right now. That's the end of the podcast, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll ever do one of those again, but I did one because I said I was gonna. So there I did it. And I'll be back on Monday. And next week should be really fucking fun and exciting. We're going to have presidential candidate Gary Johnson along with Doug Stanhope. It was supposed to be on Thursday, the 4th, but it may now be moved to Friday. We'll find out soon. Neil Brennan, co-creator of The Chappelle Show, he'll be on as well. That'll be on Wednesday. And Wayne Fetterman, hilarious stand-up comedian and very, very smart guy. He'll be there on Tuesday. Good times, you fucks. And then, of course, I'll be at the Ice House Friday night. And maybe I can talk Stanhope and do a set with me, too. All right, that's it, folks. Thanks. Appreciate the fuck out of you. Bye-bye. Big kiss.